Hey everyone, Alex Goff here with Goff Rugby Report, and I am joined by Chris Babish from Edina Rugby and Rugby Athletic. We'll put the plug out up front, but up there in Minnesota, where we're going to talk a little bit about high school rugby. And Chris, Minnesota starts your season very late, so with the COVID-19 lockdown, it seemed like we expect you not to have played at all. So what was that like for you, just to gear up for the season and then just goodbye?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think a little bit of it is probably cliche in the fact that, I actually just had a conversation yesterday with a guy, and I told him that I'm not so angry, upset, or disappointed that the season did happen. I'm more feel bad for my seniors. I had those guys through their whole high school career, and to know that they lose that senior year, again when there's a chance to go out and win some more games, that's kind of the biggest disappointment from the year. I mentioned earlier to you before we started recording that we did get the luxury of going to Wales, so we were in one of our every other year touring cycles. Kind of an eerie thought now because we actually stayed at the Holiday Inn right next to Principality Stadium, and we were doing a tour. We did a full tour of the locker rooms in the field and all that great stuff that you do on tour while we were over there. And then 3 weeks later, I'm forwarding an article to my parents and my kids that the stadium is now a hospital.
Oh my, wow.
So we didn't really think about the virus much while we were there. I know some parents were, seeing it start to pop up in LA and other parts of the world, but if anything, we got caught in a typhoon that was over there. And so the people of Wales were so good to us and allowed us to play games on turf. But our second game we played, we literally were in 50-mile-an-hour gale force winds, and it was brutal. And I told the kids at halftime, even in my 20 years of playing, I've never played in that bad of weather. But we got the games in, we got the touring done, we got all the training done, and so for us, right, we got the benefit of getting a tour, and then some of those seniors got a couple games, and but then it all came to a screaming halt.
All came to a screaming halt, that's for sure. Well, okay, so weather. I want to talk about weather because I think it's actually kind of an important thing there. Because it snows, into like July in Minnesota. Not really, but your tour time is probably at the beginning of the season. What a great time to take a tour and bond and teach people and things like that. But you're taking a risk in early spring in Wales. You might
Right.
get a lot of rain. So you got a ton of rain. But at the same time, what were some of the things off the field that you were able to get out of that tour?
So tour for me which we started doing when I became one of the Edina coaches. Tour is so important to me because it shows the culture of rugby off the field, and being with your mates and getting the training and I always say anytime you meet a rugby player and then you see him 10 years from now, he's your best friend again. And the contacts I've made over the years of traveling and playing myself have allowed me to really to plan these tours. So we were over there and we did castle tours. We toured Principality Stadium. We played 2 games. We were with the Ospreys. So, the Ospreys brought us in and we trained side by side. By their first team was on one pitch and we were on the grass next to them, and went through some training sessions. And then we were their guest for, while they were having a down year. The next day, we played a game, and then they invited us out to their game, sitting 50-meter line. We had a suite before the game with that. They brought us through all the locker rooms. They're both Ulster and Osprey's locker room, so the kids
Beautiful.
could see what it's like on a game, and like, those are the things that matter to these kids of wanting to be a pro rugby player, wanting to see how other countries do it, and so I love tour, and we go
That's great.
international every other year.
And you see, as you mentioned, the whole the brotherhood, the sisterhood type of thing, and even between professionals and some high school kid from Minnesota, it's like, great, we're still rugby players together, right? We're still together in that sport. So they're like, come on in, see what we're about.
Absolutely. I mean, we had, one year we went to Wasp and we had Paul Emmerich out at training. One year we were with Leicester Tigers and Blaine Scully came out. One year we were in Gloucester and Charlie Sharples, was training with the boys. Like, there's the greatest thing about rugby players is, whether they're American or they're internationals, is I've never met a pro rugby player that wasn't willing to give back to the sport. And even if it's just an old rugby team from Edina, Minnesota,
Mm,
we've always gotten an international or a pro player to come running training sessions for us.
that's great. Very nice. So uh, you do that, and then you're sort of getting ready for the season. Now, the thing about we talk about this with Minnesota, Michigan to a certain extent, Wisconsin. These days, I made a joke about the snow, but it is winter lasts a long time, and it takes a while to get rid of. I went to college in Rochester, New York. I know what that's like, right? So, uh, some years ago, we stopped having these things where people qualified to go to a national championship. And then it became evident that, like leagues like Minnesota said, look, uh, why should we stop playing in, late April when the weather is just getting good? Because spring in Minnesota is beautiful, it's just later.
Yeah.
Why should we worry about that? Why don't we just worry about what we're doing in our own state? Um, and would you say overall that's been a benefit to just say, look, let's just worry about our own thing and play when it's right for us?
Yeah, I mean, I would actually tell you that's very much the Edina way. I think like anybody, I've changed as a coach over the years because the players have changed, and you've got to learn to adapt to that. But I've always said if those national championships were in like end of June, we would be all over it. But the way that they've always fallen is it's the beginning of the season for us. We don't have continuity. We have new players, and as I say, like any good team, we're not peaking till June. So it was always very difficult for us to do that, but we've always beat to our own drum in a way. I think we've had tremendous success the last 10 years. But if you ask any of my kids, I don't talk about winning championships ever. I literally I have three core principles. I tell the kids, you need to be a better man every day. You need to get better at rugby every day, and you need to have fun. Literally say that every practice, every game. And if they can't do those things, I go, then you shouldn't be playing rugby and you shouldn't be playing for me. And I'm like, the sugar on top is if you can do those three things, we will win games, right? And it's as simple as that. It's kind of a weird deal. This whole coaching thing, even with the changing, is I very much am more interested in them becoming better men and see what they're doing 7, 8 years from now. And if you still have that connection with them and you're still willing to help from them, and I do, I probably get, oh man, I get so many text messages every month from former players that are like, can you give me a referral? Are you available for lunch? Can I come out to training? What's going on with your kids, my kids? Like that's what I care about. And the rugby is just, again, it's the sugar. That's the
Yeah,
extra
yeah.
stuff we get to do.
If you get a player who he played for you, he doesn't really play after high school, but he ends up running a hardware store in town, and he's the guy everybody trusts and looks up to as running a good, honest business. That's a win, right?
Right. Yeah. I
That's
mean,
great.
the number of kids that have gone on to be, captains or presidents of college teams. I mean, we have one guy right now. One of my first years, his name was Jack Butterfield. Jack was an outstanding scrum half. Went on to the University of Minnesota, but then had a neck injury
Yeah,
and had to figure out what to do. Well, Jack's now in his first year of residency in neurosurgery.
beautiful.
Like unbelievable stuff.
Yeah. So that's the and we heard you mentioned professional rugby, and that's great. Have a player go professional player on the national team, which is pretty difficult to do, right? It's not like you just if you're good, you're on the national team. Uh, but that's not what's going to happen to most of them. Most of them are going to have families and careers and things outside of rugby, and hopefully still love rugby. And so that's great to see that you get to see that benefit as well.
Yeah, I mean that's the best thing. I mean, I have text groups on my phone, and if I text the old boys, that we have a home game, they'll usually show up at the game.
Yeah,
If I'm looking for a donation, I'll get money coming in. I still have parents, from 8, 9, 10 years ago where if we need anything, all of a sudden it shows up. We have an unbelievable alumni and parent network that has made us so successful. I mean, obviously it's like anything. I'm the head coach, but it's not. I'm a facilitator.
yeah,
Everybody else does the work. And my parents, my kids, the assistant coaches, they're so good, right? They make me look good. I'm just the guy that keeps it organized.
yeah. Now you have to have that though as well. A lot of advice that I got when I was coaching was that you have to have your parents involved and your players. They have to have some kind of sweat equity into it. You can't just say, "Here you go. Here's your jerseys. Here's the trip. Here's everything," just set up by two people.
Absolutely. You have to empower them.
Yeah,
Like for me, it's about the budget is the budget. But if someone wants to be in charge of food or someone wants to be in charge of hotels, I have no problem going, well, the budget's $1,000. Do whatever you want to do.
yeah,
Right? Like just empower them to do it. And, man, the parents the last few years are like gold, And
that's
even
great.
I have one right now. His name's Aiden Anderson. He's a senior. He's going on to play for Sean Lindersmith at the University of Minnesota next year. His parents, Paul and Julie, man, they're. I called the coach. I called Sean and I said, "You're not only getting a great player, you're getting an unbelievable set of parents that will help you for the
Yeah,
next 4 years." And it's almost like besides the kid, you get awesome parents.
cool. So things to do in Minnesota, but I also wanted people to know about if they don't track because they think about nationals or there's stuff like that. When they look at the rankings and they see why is Edina there, there's a reason. There's a really good reason they're there, and you produce some really excellent players, and hopefully, as you said, some better men as well. So, Chris, thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it very much, Alex, and I hope you stay well and healthy and everything,
Trying.
comes back to a reality. Nothing more than I'd like to do than turn on the TV and see a premiership game.
That's right. Here's to waiting for normal, whatever
Absolutely.
normal is. Thank you. So, Chris, thanks a lot.
Cheers, man. Thank you.